hello. How you doing today, guys? Ooh, my little voices.
Welcome to Polite as Fuck, Savannah.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Yay!
I'm excited. We're our first guest.
Our first
I'm so
guest.
honored. I'm happy to be here.
Everyone, this is Savannah Chappell, my sister.
Hello.
She is 24 years old. She works at the Nevada Museum of Art. She's really cool. She has a loft apartment. Is this a loft apartment?
This is a loft style apartment, yes.
With vintage brick and
She likes to draw and make ceramics, and she's really artsy.
Is that your ceramic thing right there?
It is.
Yeah. See, when I first walked in, I thought it was another toilet. I was like, oh, interesting.
What?
I'm not used to. I don't know like ceramics that well, so it took me a second to be like, what is it? It looks
your
like
wheel.
a wheel. That's what it's called. I was like, it looks like a porta potty. I was confused.
Not that. It's a wheel.
How would you describe yourself, Savannah?
Oh.
What do you want the people to know?
Oh. Do you edit this out?
Yeah,
'Cause we'll
we
just
can.
edit all this out.
I love
I
it.
don't think I really have any facts and figures to share. Happy to be here. Known Erica forever.
How long have we known each other? A lot.
As long
about the
as
same.
you've known Erica.
Yeah. Some team.
Yeah, Savannah was a swimmer as well. Savannah is the second born child. She was my first sibling.
Yep.
Been buddies ever since.
Grew up in Minden, live in Reno.
Yeah.
You used to be wifey in my,
You're still in my Snapchat as wifey.
in my phone, so not sure what was going on there.
It was a prelude to the life. No, I remember that, and I felt like because there were two different groups at practice, and you and I just needed to be separated. That you and I became pretty close, I'd say, for like our age difference. But I was annoying as fuck in high school in that time of year.
Everyone was.
I know, but I feel like maybe it's just because it's me personally. But I like look back, like being home and talking about stories and stuff. I'm like, oh my god, I'm the biggest little shit there is, isn't there?
I feel like I was friends with you and your friends in high school for the most part.
Yeah.
And then when you guys graduated, it just got really sad.
Like all my friends left.
Yeah. Honestly, swim team went downhill. I feel like after you and Shelby
Yeah.
graduated.
That was the last year that we won regionals. So,
So sorry.
oops.
Douglas High.
Certainly
get it?
wasn't me carrying the team. That was 100% Shelby.
Not me at all.
You're good.
Well,
Today we wanted to talk about religion.
for some reason, no, I think just a little bit of a background. I think religion was a big part of all of our lives here. You guys grew up Mormon and I grew up Catholic. I was thinking about it, and because you guys have very similar stories with your background in religion, but I was thinking like me and probably my next sister, like the next one, are the only two that really got the like religion background. And so do you guys think that it was you two that got the most of it, or do you think like the rest of your siblings kind of felt the religion life as well?
I think Julia is probably included in that.
Okay.
And then, I mean, obviously, our two youngest siblings were raised in the church too, but I think that like their whole life experience is like a different generation from the first like three kids, because
I also feel like having older siblings to kind of navigate the stupidity of it all and figure out like what is actually meaningful and what's not, and then kind of like give you some pro tips. I don't know how helpful we were, but I do feel like they
and also like get in trouble for things that like they don't get in trouble for things that we certainly would have gotten in trouble for.
Yeah.
So I think we took the brunt of that.
Yeah, CJ's literally like blasting rap on the TV at mom's house. It's like cussing and saying the N-word, and I'm like,
She's like, you
Cool.
know I don't love this song. I'm like, what?
Oh, yeah.
bend to zone.
Okay, well, I think to start us off, because I know a little bit, only because I grew up with you guys, but I think for everybody else, like, what are your church beliefs, and then I can share mine too, because I feel like Catholic. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know what Catholics believe, so it'll be good all around.
It'll be good all around.
Catholicism is like an old religion.
It is very old, like probably one of the oldest. I'd say. It's just a real interesting group here, but yeah. So what was it like? Like in the church, what are the beliefs? What were the rules that you guys had to follow?
I think. Go ahead.
All right.
Put you on blast as our guest.
Well, I think the things like from another, like an outsider perspective, I guess, the most like obvious rules have to do with like clothes that you wear. There's like a dress code, essentially. Rules about foods and drinks that you can't have.
The word of wisdom.
The word of wisdom is what that is called.
Which includes no alcohol, no coffee, no tobacco, no hot beverages.
Tea and coffee and other strong drinks are not for the belly. We'll get into that one, because what does that mean? I mean, there's...
No dating before you're 16.
Yeah. No sex before marriage, which I think is kind of a more general religious thing.
Yeah, a lot of rules, but I think the biggest thing in the LDS Mormon Church is the modern revelation. Like we have the Bible, we also have the Book of Mormon, which was like a more recent, like from the Americas, and then there's a living prophet that they believe receives revelation from God for this current day. Mm-hmm. And so he can give you, because of course it's not a woman, he can give you revelation for your life today. So like when polygamy was something that was happening, that was coming from the prophet. And then the prophet had a revelation that they should stop polygamy. I think, I mean, I don't know a ton about it, but I think probably because it's not legal, they had to stop having multiple wives.
I would say so.
Yeah, and it was like it was the thing the prophet wanted to be polygamous. And so he like decided that that's what God said that he should do.
There's some silly ones though of like one earring. Like women can only get one earring.
Yeah, like one set. You can't have the
rebel.
Double. I know. Look at us. Look at us go. But yeah, completely.
Well, Sundays too. You guys can hang out with friends on Sundays. That was like the big thing for me, because I'd always invite people over, people I only know you, and you could never like sleep over. You'd have to leave Saturday because you could not hang out on Sundays.
Yeah, that was the day of rest.
Yeah, no, there was like no spending money on Sundays. You're not supposed to hang out with friends. We had every first Sunday of the month was Fast Sunday, where you don't eat breakfast and lunch and you only eat dinner. Every time I open a loaf of bread, I don't know if this happens to you, because we would take the sacrament every Sunday, and on Fast Sunday I was always so starving. I was always so pissed off on Fast Sunday, as you would be if you don't eat breakfast or lunch, and then you sit in church for 3 hours. And we would have the sacrament, and that one little square of bread is all you had for like the first 9 hours of the day to sustain you. And I like just remember eating it so slow and like savoring every morsel. And every time I open a loaf of bread, I think about that. That is so funny.
Yeah, there's so many. I feel like the more we talk about it, the more I'm thinking of like, oh yeah, that was a thing. But I feel like the general...
You get the idea.
It's very, very traditional, very much like men are the head of the household. The whole religion is essentially run by men in any like meaningful way.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And they try to say women have really divine roles in the church, and it's just not a way to try to like keep the conflict at bay, I think, because women can't have the priesthood, which is like an essential component of the church, and
temples. Oh my gosh, temples.
Oh,
temples.
So you have your church building that you go to on Sunday, and anybody can go inside a church building. Uh-huh. But the temple is where you do work. You do what are those? What is it called?
Baptism?
Well, you do more than that though. Like you
ordinances?
You do like ordinances. You do all these like symbolic things
for dead
people who have died. So like Erica and I have done baptisms for the dead, which is
what does that mean?
Which is where you go to the temple and you get baptized in proxy for someone who has died. So like I'll get baptized in the name of someone who has died,
who didn't have the chance to be in the Mormon church when they were alive. We're giving them the chance
to accept that.
So like
I get baptized for Ann Smith, and then she can accept the gospel on the other. But the church got in trouble because they were baptizing people, like names of people who died in the Holocaust, who literally died for their religion. They were baptizing people.
Yeah. What the fuck?
So
because the way what Mormons believe is like when you die, you're basically in like this holding room.
Yeah, like purgatory is what we call it, I think. But it's a little different. Okay, yeah.
Until you either accept or deny. And if you accept, then you go.
Which if you're literally dead and you're in this holding room and you're like, oh, Mormonism was real, wouldn't you just accept it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like who's dead and goes, no, I'd rather go to hell.
I mean, at this point, me. But
if it means being up there with all you guys, no thank you.
And in the temple, you can only wear white. Mm-hmm. So you wear like white jumpsuits. All the Bibles are bound in white binding. You can only wear a white hair tie. Your fingernails can only be painted white.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Everyone is wearing white. And it's like a lot of this is where the like real culty vibe stuff starts to happen is in the temple. Because the water basin that you're getting baptized in is held up by 12 oxen, which represent the 12 tribes of Israel. And like, there's all these symbolic meanings.
It's fascinating though. Like, I feel like now that I'm out of it, just like the history of it, and it literally came from like spiritual, like some of the things that like we do is just like, it's just so spiritual that I'm like, you're just putting a man in charge. Like, why we could still have these like vibes without you being fucking weird.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I never got, I mean, that's like what people get married in the temple is like what the temple is usually known for. And a lot of crazy shit happens when you go through and like do a full thing in the temple. And they actually have released, people have gone in and videotaped like what happens in the temple.
It reminds me of Scientology. Like
totally.
It's like that's what it reminds, because there's like different steps or something. I don't know too much about it, but it's like it's really interesting that there's like different like steps. And don't you have to be like a certain age to like do those things, or does it?
Yeah. And you have to get an interview.
So you
have to get an interview by the bishop. So you're just in this one-on-one room, closed door.
12-year-old
girl with a grown man asking you if you've been sexually active. Do you believe in God?
Did you guys have to do this?
Yeah. That's the only way you could go to the temple is if you do those interviews and you have to pass the questions. And I remember, I have a vivid memory of like one time where I was basically like faltering on some of the questions because I just wasn't totally sure. And I was coaxed into like, you know the right answer. Like that's, you believe this. Yeah.
Yeah. The bishop interviews are whack and super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And
I know we would beg mom to be like, no, I don't want to do it. Like, we don't have to go.
It's just like in the church, the temple is like such a sacred place. And it's a place where you're going to like have a really spiritual experience and feel the spirit, and it's like super emotional, and I always felt so uncomfortable. I always felt so weirded out and like not any of the things that people describe that I would feel in there. I'm like, this is weird.
Yeah.
I felt like I really like was like forcing myself to have spiritual experiences.
Goes against your intuition or like your feeling of right and wrong within yourself. It makes you like go against that because you're like, I think this is what I'm supposed to feel here, and I actually feel the opposite. And like makes you not trust yourself.
Let me touch on the Catholic Church a little bit. I don't know too much about it. It's been a really long time, and my thing is like they change it all the time, like the way so like especially like in church, like mass is about like an hour long, and then there's like different like sections that you have to hit in order to like whatever, like this happens and then you sing a song and then this happens, yada yada. It's been so long that I forget, but it's also like they'll say something and then you have to respond, and like the response has changed, and like when you kneel and when you stand up has changed, and so that's what frustrates me. It's like, who decides that? Like you just, I thought this was like the way of God, but if some person in a room is deciding it, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Is it the Pope?
I guess. I don't know, but I feel like I don't fucking know. And also I just like am so over the Catholic Church, even more than I was before, because all of the like sexual harassment around there is just like, it's just creepy. But as far as like mine, like my mom was very into church, and I think got into it when she was in college, so it really just like helped her deal with some things. And obviously coming from like a Latin family, they're very, very Catholic, but I don't remember it like church being talked about. It was more so like the idea of going to church. Like my grandmother like never took me to church, but it was like, you will pray before you eat, you always do the sign, it's always like that, like always you always do that. And like even now, like my sister classifies herself as religious, and like we'll do like the sign of the cross and stuff like when we're like driving across a bridge or something, but I don't remember the last time her ass has ever been to church. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's more of this like idea than the actual like going into. But for me, I went to church for a long time, especially growing up, just because it was, in my mind, it was kind of like swimming, in the sense of like I moved around so much that it was the only constant in my life. Like obviously swimming was a little bit more serious, and I just went, to be with my mom. And then when I got here, I met a lot of, I mean, it was such a tiny town. Like I feel like everybody went to church. Everybody I talked to went to some sort of church. And even like some people that were in my like Catholic, we had like our Bible study and like our like classes to like get to be confirmed and baptized and all of these things. Like I feel like everybody I saw at the Catholic church, and now they all went to their Christian church. So it was kind of like a start there and then go to something a little less crazy. And so I just remember like having vivid memories of doing like Bible studies and really trying to get into it, and having like, I used to, in my truck that I had a sticky note of my favorite Bible verse and taped it into my door. So I would like open the door and like see it there. And like it was like such a big part of my life. I can't even remember what it was now. Deuteronomy something. Just because like I love that word, Deuteronomy. But
what are the like beliefs? Like you said you have a confirmation and stuff. How does that work?
I'm trying to remember. So each, like, it's supposed to be a stage. Like you get like baptized. So I was baptized as a kid, and then like when I was like 3-4 months or something like that. And I just remember being like going to people's baptisms and all of that. Communion is one. So being able to like actually take like the blood and body of Christ. So when you eat, you basically like the little wafers or whatever, which were bomb too, man. I'd take them in some hummus home, not kidding. And then like the wine, which was always like shit wine, but you always like had to get like a little bit of a gulp, to endure the rest of the church day. And then confirmation, which is like you're being like confirmed into the church.
Is there an age on that?
Yes. Like I want to say like 15 or 16. You have to do a certain amount of hours of classes. And so that's when I got into it the most, because I was having to do the classes. Like every Wednesday you go, you have your mass, and then you go after and go into your like separate classrooms and like do like a teacher and stuff like that. And I even remember doing like a first grade class. So I had my own class, and then I went and taught like the younger kids too. And then there's like a whole bunch, like marriage is one, the act of like not death, but like before you die, you get like your rights or whatever, all in order to get, so you need all of your, I don't even know what they're called. Sacraments, maybe? I don't know. In order to go to heaven or something like that. So, and I'm probably totally butchering this. But as far as like rules and beliefs, very like the baseline was like the no tattoos, only one piercing, and like
You
no
had
sex
that too?
before. Yeah.
I didn't know
But
that.
in like Latin culture, like women get their ears pierced. Like babies, you go and get their ears pierced, which is like, I have thoughts about that, but like that's just what you do. And so, and then no sex before marriage. I'm trying to think of like, there are like deep things that I remember like during, so there's what's the Tuesday? I'm trying to remember. I'm like butchering it. But like the 40 days, like basically when Christ traveled 40 days and 40 nights, that's like the start of like Easter, right? Is like at the end of it. So between it's in February. It's like what they celebrate
Lent?
Lent, but it's like whatever the day is. It's like Fat Tuesday or something like that. Anyway, it's literally like you eat all these things, but then
aren't those like the alcoholic drinks, like the huge drinks that you get in Vegas?
Oh, I want one now. No, but like for Lent, for those 40 days, like you'd have to give something up. And then also I remember like for one season of Lent, we had to wear these like little net things on our head. And then Ash Wednesday is when you get like the little the palm ash, like Christ sign on your forehead. And I remember like going to school like that. And it was just like, I honestly walked through it so blind. I just did whatever my parents said. And then when I started doing Bible study with some friends, I started asking questions like, is the Bible like real? Are they real stories or are they made up stories? Like, are dinosaurs real or were like Adam and Eve here? And like, I don't understand. Like, I want to know specifically what to believe and what not to believe. And what irritated me is like, no one could give me an answer. Mm-hmm. So there was like all these rules that I just tried to like follow and be a part of and know when to sign, when not to sign, how to respond to someone while at church and all of these things and read your Bible and do the rosary and all of these things. But then as soon as I had like any questions, like no one could give me any answers. Like I still am like baffled. So like, were Adam and Eve real? Like were the dinosaurs? Were there people? And then because like nowadays they're like, oh yeah, we do believe in what is it? When like, you know, no, like evolution, obviously, because like it's scientific fact, but it's like, but if Adam and Eve were here and the whole reason why women are more submissive than men is because Eve fucked up and ate the apple, like, so if they're not real, then why do we believe these things? Like no one could give me an answer. So I think that's where I started being like, this is not right. But as far as beliefs, like I know a lot stronger beliefs out there. It's just I kind of just went in blind and just did whatever was asked of me, and then just decided like, okay, it wasn't for me. But yeah, some people like the same, like some don't do coffee, some do like other crazy things about like going on Wednesday and on Sunday, and Sunday is the day of rest, so not being able to like hang out. I don't know about like not spending money or anything like that. So there are like deep rules, especially if you get into it. But then what I like the most is there were like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard the term like creasters, and it's the people that go to church on Christmas and Easter, and that's it. And so like we started to be that family, so it kind of like died out a little bit. But I mean, just like having that, like always like having to go to church, I just remember being such a big thing. And like praying before food and all of that stuff. So it wasn't as intense as you guys, but I think like while you're in mass and just hearing people speak is when I know like the intensity and the beliefs were like really hitting me, because I was like, this doesn't make any sense. But as far as like specific beliefs, that's pretty much it. At least that way that I grew up, the beliefs that we followed, or rules, should I say, that we followed. Not as intense as you guys, for sure.
I feel like there's a lot of similarities though. Like even some of the things you're mentioning, I was like, oh, I didn't realize. Like I always thought it was so specific to Mormon religion, but I think just because I didn't know what other religions were really doing. But you talked about going to church more than once a week. And I think maybe this is a good segue into growing up in religion, because we had church on Sundays. We had family home evening, which was basically like in-home church. Would you describe it that way?
Yeah, like I mean, it was definitely more low key, but it was like a lesson, and we would sing and pray and do like a whole little thing every Monday night. Every Monday.
And then Wednesday, we had youth group, which was church again. And in high school, you have church every morning.
You had your seminary class before school. Little
Sounds
Bible
fucking
study.
miserable.
So like each year you study a different book. There's the Doctrine and Covenants, Book of Mormon, Old Testament and New Testament, and those are like your 4 years of high school. You study a different book every year, and it's like an hour. It's from 6:30 to 7:30 every morning before school. So we really had the Holy Trinity right there. Like, it was
literally school, swim, church,
all in the same like parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are really living the dream there.
Yeah,
You never leave.
So did you guys both do that all through high school?
Yeah. What was your experience with seminary?
Horrid. I don't even know. We had the same seminary teacher. I didn't have her for all 4 years, but Erica and I did have the same seminary teacher at one point. And she was kooky. Oh no. And it was I don't know. I feel like I also was just having a lot of, I mean, as every high schooler is, you're like, got a lot going on and a lot of priorities and like taking AP classes and swimming and dryland and school. And like, I feel like I never really had a moment to rest. And I hated seminary. I hated going. I did not feel, there were reading assignments every day. So that was like additional work that you had to do. I didn't really connect with a lot of the people in my age group. Like I didn't really have a lot of close friends in church. I did, but they weren't in like our ward. Yeah. They like lived in Carson and stuff. So I just felt like I didn't want to be there. And then she would say whack comments all the time. And I'm like, what is going on? Yeah. I feel like you have more concrete examples. Well, she actually did not like you. And made that very clear.
What? I think because her daughter like thought that I was like stealing guys from her. So bizarre. I'm like, show me I'm not interested. Ask me how many Mormon guys I've dated. Zero. Because
zero is the number.
I can't, to your point, like I just couldn't like connect with these people. It was like I was like forcing myself so hard to be, and also being the oldest too, I was like trying to be the good example, but also still like figuring out what I even believed. So like sneaking around to like do other things. And anyway, she gave awards out. There was this guy for one of the years they had like junior seniors in the same seminary class, and he was like the star football player and like the perfect Mormon kid, even though he wasn't. I have a story about that. But she gave him like the Moroni Award, which is like some prophet in the Book of Mormon,
who's literally on top of the temple. Like there's a statue of him on every single temple. He's like a sacred figure in the Mormon religion.
Oh God.
And this kid got that award.
He got that award, and I got the one-liner award. And the rationale for that was because I don't speak up often, but when I do, I always have a good one-liner to add.
Still true today, I'd say. Oh my God.
It's just like so stupid. And I also remember one time we were talking about death in seminary and just like, if you died tomorrow, like, would you be ready? Just more of like that, like fear tactic. Like, are you prepared? And I basically said, like, I'm not ready to die. Like, I feel like I still have a lot that I want to do in life. So I wouldn't, not trying to die tomorrow.
You're ready to die as a 16-year-old.
And this kid who got the Moroni Award said something like, I'm ready whenever God's like chooses for me to go. And then she was like, basically like shaming me for my response. And like, we should all be like this kid because he's ready. He like has already accepted that he knows he's going to end up with God. And like I was just like,
I hate that shit.
There's one comment that I made that I think about to this day, and I wish I could see her and tell her. that this is what I meant by this. But
let me explain. Okay.
If she ever listens, this is what I meant. Because this is like the time in high school where I'm like, I don't connect with the gospel. I don't this doesn't resonate with me. This feels like a religion that is exclusive and is like demeaning, and I don't like agree with a lot of the doctrine that they're teaching and the like morals and the culture of this church. I just don't align myself with. And I was like trying to find something in the church that I resonated with so that I could have some sort of justification for like being affiliated with it. And I told her in our seminary class that the gospel to me is kindness. And I distinctly remember that I was like just really trying to be like in the genuine sense of Christ-like love, to have love for everyone. And like, yes, gay people. Yes, people of color. Yes, men and women and all people like of faith practices that I don't practice. And like what would Christ-like love literally mean? That's what I want to like try to exude, and like that's what the gospel meant to me was kindness. And I completely disagree with that. I don't think the gospel is kindness at all. I think that like that's a horrible like cultish, hateful religion masked in like
love and we're so good. I totally agree with that.
And so that's not what I meant. Here to clear that up. I was trying to be a kind person. I don't think the gospel made me a kind person.
I think it's interesting that you say that about kindness, because that's what pulled me close to the church. And I also think like it helped me because I had so many friends from high school that went to my church as well. So it was more of like a social time, a social activity for all of us to get together. And then I would distinctly remember having so many Bible studies like with large groups, but also like individual people, and then having conversations with them and realizing like, oh shit, you have the same questions as I do, but I also see that you're a kind person. But I also want to say that I feel like, especially growing up here, saying you went to church, and I think this might be a little different for you guys because you were Mormon, but I want to say like Catholic and Christian, like saying that you're a Catholic or saying that you were Christian or that God or whatever was like a fad. It was like a cool thing to do. So I would say it because I went to church, but I would be off sneaking out of my house, getting drunk. I smoked weed. Like I wanted to be with boys. Like I had sex really young. And it was like, I was saying all of these things, but then doing all of the things that they tell you not to do. And I felt like everybody else that I was close with that went to my church was doing the same exact thing. So I was like, oh, this is what you do. You preach one thing and then you say another. And so that's kind of like how it started. And it was just hard because I was like in my mind trying to find like my place, because I'm like, I don't want to stop what I'm doing. I like being like rebellious and doing these things. And it wasn't like I wasn't too crazy. Like I think swimming really held me back because I wanted to put all of my things into there, but I was like sneaking out. I was being mean to people. I was like saying cuss words and acting a fool in high school. And I feel like I, at the end of the day, was so confused because I'm like, but everybody else is doing this too, but they preach. Like I was just confused because I'm like, but you go to church too and you say all of these things, but like I saw you at her house drinking too. So I'm like, no, I'm so confused. And I just remember being so like, I don't know what this means. Like, is this what it means? Is this a hypocrisy? Like you literally say one thing on Sundays and Wednesday nights, and then you go live a different life. And so that's where I kind of growing up was just like, oh, this is what people do. This is what church is. And I think when I moved to Southern California, my family really got more into church and I started pulling away. And then I started dating someone that was very, very religious. And I had already had sex at this time and he said that he wanted to wait. So I totally understood that. But even like making out with this person, he would like say it's like devil like devil things, or like he would like touch me or something and be like, oh my God, the devil made me do this. And I just like, that's when I was like, I think I'm done with this, because it's not, no one's answering any of my questions. None of my friends who I thought were my friends that were doing this path with me are on this path anymore. I don't see a point. I feel like it's all like crazy, but just like having it growing up, it honestly just felt like the cool thing to do, and that's why I did it for so long. And that, like, obviously my parents made me, but I didn't feel like they'd made me. I wanted to go because it was the cool thing to do.
Speaking of cool things to do, we went on a thing called Trek. Which, how would you explain Trek?
Trek is like LARPing.
That's a good analogy.
It's like you dress up like pioneers and you go out into the wilderness and you push a handcart and you reenact what the pioneers had to do to like cross the plains, but
we're not pioneers.
But we're not pioneers. We're children, and we're going to school, and we live in modern times. But Erica and I made our own. We sewed.
Yeah.
We sewed our own skirts and aprons, and we wore bonnets, and we had to wear little button-up shirts and pajama bottoms.
What were those things underneath? Like little
bloomers.
Bloomers.
Wow.
And hike through the mountains.
Yep.
Pushing a handcart.
And we were in families. Yep.
And I just shoved that bitch into my arm, and I was like, we're going.
Oh my God.
And I'm just going to retell this a little bit because I think it's so funny. But like how our church and school and the swim center were all in the same like parking lot. We were all in the parking lot getting ready to load up to go to Trek, and we're all wearing our ridiculous outfits. And right across the street is the pool, and I see all my teammates like going to practice, and my coach is out there, and I'm like standing in the parking lot of the church wearing a bonnet and a skirt. And I'm like, I feel like an idiot. And it was just, I never wanted to go.
Yeah.
Never wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah.
I think they caught on to that real quick because the next Trek that they had, it was like modern day Trek.
Mm-hmm.
So we were like the last of the, well, you only had to go on Trek once, and I had to go twice.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was like the perfect age where I was 12, like just turned 12 when the first Trek happened. And then I was still in high school when the second Trek happened, because it's not every year.
It's like every 4 years, I think.
And
that sucks. Is that the same thing that you guys did? What was that one camp that you guys went to?
Oh, girls' camp?
I feel like there were a lot of different people there. It wasn't just Mormons. Or maybe, I don't know. I remember you posting something on Facebook, and it was like you and your friends. You guys were wearing, I think, like a purple t-shirt that had like wording on it.
It was probably girls' camp.
I think, yeah.
And girls' camp is like, I mean, Trek and girls' camp were not just our specific, like,
church. There were like other people.
Like,
okay.
People from Carson and
I think it was that.
Yeah, all over northern
like,
Nevada
the area.
Mm-hmm.
And girls' camp was actually fun. There were some whack experiences there too, like testimony meetings.
Ooh.
And just like the kookiest people, like the weirdest kids that you're like, we're gonna sleep next to each other in this campsite, and you're freaking me out. And
I just like the things sometimes, like the way, and I feel like you guys totally get this, but like the way that adults worded things it was just so, like you were talking about before, is like getting that feeling of like, this is not right, but feeling like I have to be here because it's right. And they would just say things that made you the way, I'm just trying to think of an example, and if you guys have one, that would be great, but I don't have one off the top of my head. Of just like, you would ask a question, or you would be doing something or looking at something or talking to someone, like even talking to another, like the opposite sex, and they would like point you out and make you feel like shit for something that you weren't even like aware of. And then you went, like, they would gaslight you and then also make you feel like shit for even asking, or like the way that they would word it would be like, calling you out for something and then putting you, like what you were saying for your whatever classes or whatever, like make you an example for everybody else. And you're like, wait, what? Like, I thought this was supposed to be like all love and light, and it's dark and cloudy in here. I don't like it.
I do think with the Mormon religion, it's less fear-based than Catholicism. Like, I feel like from what I know about Catholicism, it's a lot of like hellfire and fury and like just be so scared.
Yes.
Whereas I feel like where the hypocrisy comes in with the Mormon religion is that like you can always repent. You can be a child molester and repent, and it's okay. Like, it's always okay. You can always like, which is like, I guess, hopeful, but also just bizarre to me.
I mean, the Catholic
like,
had that too, of like the repenting. It was just like the preaching of it was like, do this or else. Like, you need to act this way or else like hell is going to be there for you. And it is not fun and act this way. But then if you do mess, it was just like this weird, like, there were no like consistent rules. Like, you have to do this, but then if you fuck up, like you can always ask for forgiveness and God will always be there for you. It was just this weird, you always felt so uncomfortable and that you couldn't mess up, but if you did, it's okay. Like, we'll bring you in, child. Like, you're all loved, but just you can't do this again kind of thing. And I'm like, what the fuck? This doesn't make sense. There's no like consistency.
Yeah. I feel like shame was a huge component of the church. And I think something that's really an inconsistency with like the Mormon religion is how much they talk about agency and your ability to choose, but they actually like make the choices for you. They're like, you can choose, but here's what you're going to do.
But here's the right choice.
Yeah, but this is the choice to make.
Yeah.
And like, the rules don't make sense. Like, I just straight up, certain things, sure, yeah, we don't want to do hard drugs because that would probably be a bad thing to do.
You don't want to kill someone.
You don't want to murder would be a bad choice to make. But it's like, when I got herbal tea from my violin teacher, who's probably better than any Mormon on the planet, and I'm not allowed to drink my herbal tea because tea is not good for the belly, I'm like, what does that even mean? Feels good in my belly. I just don't understand. And like, just shame for any thought that you have and feeling like God is always watching and God is always like in your mind is how I felt. Because I'm like, when I'm praying in my mind, I'm talking to myself. I don't feel like I'm talking to God. I don't think God hears me. But that's what everyone's saying is what's happening. And so then it just made me feel like shame for any thoughts that I have that are like completely normal human thoughts. But I've been like told and trained and taught that this is like a bad thing. And just makes you feel like shameful for being a normal person and having like questions about things and questioning the religion itself. And there's a like quote in the Mormon church, and this one is so fucked up to me. It's like, doubt your doubts before you doubt your faith. What? I'm going to doubt the doubts that I have about the church before I doubt my faith in the church. That doesn't make any sense. Why can't I have questions? Why can't there, like,
that
if
was
the
my
church is
thing. Like,
true,
why
then
can't
it can
I?
Withstand
Exactly.
questioning.
Exactly.
And I remember I was in my first lifeguard class, and this girl that was a few years older than me in high school, we were in the same lifeguard class, and I really enjoyed like hanging out with her. And we were kind of started talking about the Bible, and she was religious. Everyone in Minden was religious. Yeah. And she was like, I just like to think of the Bible as more of like stories that you can like learn lessons from, like having faith and trusting God. And like, I don't literally believe that Noah's Ark happened or Jonah and the whale
I think that
happened.
same person told me the same thing.
Really?
Yeah.
And it literally blew my mind because I'm like, that makes so much sense. Because here, this whole time I've been trying to like wrap my mind around these like fantastic stories that are like out of a fairy tale that don't literally make sense.
Yeah.
And that does.
Yeah.
But that's not like the way that the Bible is taught to you.
No.
And it's just like confusing. And I think shame is like a really manipulative and powerful way to like control someone's behavior in a negative way.
And church is such an easy way to do that. And that's my problem with it.
Yeah.
Is like aside from me personally about like my feelings and thoughts in the church and like my own path that I'm going on, whatever, I have no problem with people believing in God. I think it's a very beautiful thing. It's very powerful to believe that whatever. I don't know if I believe it, but I know people that do. My problem is like, is the actual like church and religion, because it literally takes like all of these like beautiful things and twists it up and then creates all these bullshit rules that make people feel horrible about themselves, and like young kids that it's literally their psychological way of growing up is to ask questions. And now you're like shaming them and pushing them down to like ask more about like, why does my body feel like this? Like masturbation was a whole huge no. Like you're not allowed to self-explore. But if the boys did it, God will forgive you. But ladies, absolutely not. You should not be in tune with your body. You should not know anything about your body. Like it is the man's world and you're just living in it kind of thing. And like all these things that are like natural conversations that you're trying to ask, like people that are supposed to care about you. Like if you don't feel comfortable going to your parents, you're supposed to have like the other outlets that you go to, your coaches, your not really your teachers, but like other places. And like for church, that's one of them. So when you go and you ask them questions and they tell you that what you're feeling is wrong, you're going to go home and be like, well, fuck, like, do I not go to heaven now? Is my whole fucking existence like shot because I am having these feelings? Yeah. And that's my problem with it, is like I distinctly remember going to a church in Southern California, and it was during it was around like voting time, so like October, November time. And I remember they took the whole, like, I don't know what it's called, but I'm just gonna use the word sermon. That's not right. It's the wrong religion. I don't even fucking know my own religion. But the whole time they took the passage out of the Bible and completely twisted the words in order for that priest to then tell the entire congregation that he was preaching to, so what, hundreds of people, to basically not vote for this person, to vote for this person. And I remember being like, are you getting this? Like, this is not right. This is not what God doesn't give a fuck who you vote for. Like, why is this like what you're twisting? And the fact that like we've now placed these like power, what power does to men, like I am going to say that because I think it's true, because what other women, like we don't have more women in power than men, but like what it does to men is like ridiculous. And now they're in charge of large groups of people and say that what you're doing is wrong. And then they're going to place it because God told me so. Are you fucking serious? Like, no, that is what gets me. And that's where I feel that like, this is not right. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, people can live through kindness and live in God and completely create their own way of living through God that's the right way. Like I think that same person's telling me that is like, it's okay if you make a mistake. God is there to like walk the path with you, or like Jesus is there to walk the path with you, and it's okay to make mistakes. It's just to always recognize and learn from it. And when that person said that, I'm like, why don't they teach that shit? Because that's beautiful. Mm-hmm. But this whole like, don't do this and don't do that, and you're gonna go to hell if you do this, I'm like, what? This doesn't sit right with me, because people makes mistakes all the time.
On that same thread.
Yes.
I feel like what you were talking about earlier about kids like saying one thing in church and then behaving another way, mm-hmm. as kids are going to do. I think that's like all the things that you do in high school, like that people do in high school, are just common. And like, I think drinking in high school is a common thing. And I think you're kind of putting your blinders on if you think that doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. And I feel like where religion gets like tricky in that is that kids are going to continue to do those things, but then they're not going to feel comfortable talking to their parents about it. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to get into like dangerous situations because they haven't been educated about it. Mm-hmm. I know in a previous episode, you talked about like developing a healthy relationship with alcohol. Mm-hmm. And that's not something that I ever saw growing up, because I mean, and obviously it's an individual person's choice as to whether or not they want to drink, but like it was just not ever spoken about other than don't do it. Mm-hmm. And same with like sex is mm-hmm. like just don't do it, which is like not an effective teaching tool
at all.
Because it's like it's gonna happen, but then you're going to be an idiot about it because you don't have any education or tools, or like feeling like you can confide in your parents or adults around you to like talk to them about those things that are like
100%
really pressing issues when you're in high school and they're really on your mind. And I think in the Mormon religion specifically, when you get in trouble, you have to go talk to your bishop.
Mm-hmm.
So high school kids getting in trouble for drinking and going and talking to their bishop, who's then counseling them through their experience, whether that was drinking, whether that was having sex, whether that was being sexually assaulted.
Yep.
And a bishop is not a licensed therapist.
No.
And that is not a safe and comfortable environment for kids to be in a closed room with a grown man who has a position of power in a religious affiliation. Like mm-hmm. that shit just makes me so mad. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that that's any place for like religion in a kid's life, mm-hmm. is to like be providing therapy or be providing counsel or telling them where they went wrong, mm-hmm. you know?
And even like more so to the parents that like, I feel at the time, like my mom was raising 4 kids, including myself, all by herself because my dad was deployed. And the only people that she had was like the church to tell her what to do. And they're telling her like, oh, bring her in to talk to, or like, she should be doing this. They should be doing this, and it's like, you're not the whole system. It's like a whole circle. You're fucking up the kids and then you're fucking up the parents that are trying to help their kids, you know, mm-hmm. because I feel like even parents sometimes get a little icky feeling like, oh, this isn't right. I want to help my kid, but maybe I'm not the one to. And so they turn to the church because that's been their savior or whatever. And then it just is like a horrible cycle because then you bring in and then you're like, no, this is the right decision. Go in there, talk to him, and then shut the door. And you're sitting there like, what the fuck? Like, I'm not going to tell you this or explain it, or you already know because my mom just told you. Mm-hmm. So now I'm sitting here and you're telling me about my experience that it's just a lot. It's a lot for kids to deal with. And I just don't, it surprises me how many people still stay with the church.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, why? I want to be like, why? Why are you doing that? But
I feel like it's like a fear one way or fear the other.
Yeah.
Like it's like the fear tactic of like, I need to do these things so I end up the right way, or like I end up in the right place, whatever. Mm-hmm. Or it's like, if I break away from this, then what? Mm-hmm. Like that's a scary thing. Like then what do I do if I don't know?
I feel though like living in this town has not helped. Like I am a strong believer, and I think both of you guys are too, like leave your town. Like don't live in your town after high school. Don't live in your town. Like steer away, even if it's like an hour away, so you can gain some perspective. Because I feel like the people that stay in that town, it's like I said before, it is the cool thing to have a religion. Now that I've left, I've realized that there are more people that think the way that I do, that are more like spiritual and like want something to believe in, but don't really know what to do or had that background. Then I thought, like growing up, I was like, oh, everybody must be religious. Everybody goes to some kind of church. You're either Mormon or Catholic or Christian or Jewish, and that's it. And I'm like, you know what I mean? So I feel like you leave and you gain more perspective of the world, and you realize like, oh, like there is no right way. And I think that's like so important. But I think that segues perfectly into how you broke free from the church and like your guys' experience of like deciding, like, I know you spoke a little bit about it a little while ago, of like sitting there and feeling like this is not resonating with me. It's not a good feeling. Like, did you feel that too? Did you graduate high school? Like what was your like breaking free moment? And like, yeah.
I have distinct memories of asking questions, particularly the emotions are running high, particularly around like people of color not getting the priesthood, and like why, like that didn't make sense to me. And the answers that I got are so fucked up, just about like they weren't pure, or like they and I just remember feeling like, and like questions around like gay people, like why can't they get married, and like things like that. And I feel like I think I'm just born this way, like that I just love everyone.
Yeah.
And so things like that just like really hard for me to accept. But I also was like trying so hard to be that good example as the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
Like I felt like I was constantly in this like navigating, like trying to figure out what I believe, but also like sacrificing what I believe because I wanted to what I thought was a good example for my siblings, or like what I thought my parents wanted me to do.
Right.
And when I went to college, actually even before then, like I read the whole Book of Mormon. That was a thing that like you were encouraged to do for your like young woman medallion. Which is just a stupid necklace. That's all it is. And I remember finishing it and like really like trying to be like, did I have this like big feeling?
Right.
Like really talking myself into being like, wow, that was really powerful. But it just like wasn't. There was like nothing there. And so I never read it again. Like I did it and I was like, how do people read this every day?
I think once is enough.
And then when I went off to college, and it's just very different than small town Nevada. And like I didn't have friends in the church outside of church. Like they were my church friends. We didn't really hang out outside of church. And then I had my real friends that I would do things with outside. So then when I'm in school and like trying to like connect with these people, like I did try going to church, and I went to this thing called Institute, which is basically like youth group but for adults. I just kind of stopped going to church on Sundays and would only go to the Institute because that was when there was like activities and like things that weren't so spiritual focused. But the first semester of college, or first year, I was called to be in the Relief Society, which is like the women's group. And I remember I had to teach a lesson on modesty. And I was trying to take my own approach to it because I was like, I don't believe this, like what it was trying to have me teach. And I remember there were some people who talked to me after that were like, I really appreciated your approach to that. Like, I thought I really resonated with that. And there were other people that were like,
you're wrong,
basically giving me feedback about like how I could have improved it, or like maybe some scriptures that I can read to like better understand the doctrine. And I was just like, I just don't know if this is like for me. And so, yeah, I was going to Institute. I was like still kind of balancing. And I feel like it was more of like when I would call home or talk to people back home, I was like, yeah, totally. And I remember visiting you in Utah State and like kind of being, I hate using the C word, but kind of being a cunt and like being like, why aren't you going to church? Like just like really trying to like make sure that if I was doing it,
your siblings,
like it was worth it enough to like help other people do it. Because I'm like, I'm still going.
So your ass better be doing it too.
You should do it too. Otherwise, why am I doing this?
That's so funny.
And then when I moved away even further, I moved across the country and was living with my boyfriend. And there was this battle of like, I need to go to church, but also like we're living together and we shouldn't be living together. And like we're having sex, but like we shouldn't be having sex. And so that was like, I feel like the height of my battle with like, what do I actually believe? And then I think that's when it really started, because the shame was so high then, so strong. Like I just felt so bad about myself all around, and I was taking that out on him, and I felt very alone. And then I think right after that, I went and lived abroad alone, and that was like, I just felt so free.
Yeah.
Because I was like, there's no one here to tell me what I should and shouldn't do and what I believe, and I'm just going to do whatever I want.
Yep.
And I love people, and I love the cultures, and I love interacting, and I can experience this in my own way.
Yeah.
And I've just felt like it was like the most freeing experience, because I felt like I was able to like have that journey of self-discovery without the confines of like small town, or even in college, like being around people that I knew were Mormon. It was like literally no one knew who I was or what I believed. I was all alone in discovering that. And I feel like that was what I needed to be able to find my own way.
Well, and you said you went to church in Peru and it was like,
oh yeah,
we're just here because we want to spread love.
And yeah, it was literally
not even about the doctrine, really. It was just like a community space.
Yeah.
To like be with other people who like want to share their love for each other.
I love that aspect of it. That's the only hard thing is like I did feel sometimes not so much culty, but more community. But it was only with the people my age and only with the people that I had conversations with and were like, oh, you're asking the same questions that I am. And like, we're just here because we love and want to spread that kindness. And that's great. But I just felt like the church was not doing that at all. But what about you? What's your breaking free story of the church?
Well, I think like I started to really ask questions like that, at least to myself, because I didn't feel like there was a space where I could necessarily ask without being shamed for asking these questions. In like middle school, like 8th or 9th grade, I was like, I don't know, like this just doesn't really sit right with me.
Right.
And then definitely in high school, I was kind of just going through the motions, and I think I was like going through a lot of other things internally that I didn't really have words to describe that. And so I just was feeling like generally depressed. And eventually when I had like some situations with some close friends of mine, like coming out and then kind of like discovering that more for myself, it made me feel like this just isn't for me, and doctrine-based things not really resonating. And then I told my mom, because my dad was deployed my senior year of high school. So I just told my mom that when I graduated, I would not be going to church anymore. And that was really hard. That was like a hard conversation to have. And then, but that was like, I just knew for a fact. I'm like, I'll respect that this is what you want me to do when I'm living under your roof, but like, this is not for me. And then I went to school in Utah, of all places.
Good choice.
I really like had just such high hopes and goals and dreams. And then it was like, oh, money is real and paying for school is real. And I don't have money to go to school. But I had these like really intense relationships with moms in the church. Like I called them my mom friends. And it was this group of women who were like my youth leaders when we would go to like girls' camp and stuff. And I just felt really connected to them. And I did have some intense conversations like where I felt like I could ask those questions with one woman in particular. But anyway, one of my mom friends, her niece was going to go to Utah State also. And so she like set us up together so that we could room because we didn't know anyone else going to the same school.
Right.
And her name is Lily, and her whole her whole family had like recently left the church also. She was raised Mormon and left the church. And I feel like there's just such a strong connection with anyone who's been raised Mormon and has left. They just get it. And like, you're just like trauma bonded for real.
Right.
And Lily and I like totally connected and hit it off. And I think that that's like the whole reason that I went to Utah was to meet her and to have that time. And I also needed to be so far away from Minden, like that I couldn't like go back there, and that people that were there couldn't come to me. I needed to like have my own time. So Utah was a weird choice for that. Because it wasn't BYU, but I think it was like 88% of the student population is still Mormon. And I had some really interesting class experiences. I took like a feminism class and had some strange comments from people, but there were also like people who got it and like, you know, free thinking folks there too. And I mean, I was only there for a year, but that was like a time where I really felt like I got to explore what I thought for myself and like make my own choices. And I got to see Erica a few times because she was like 4 hours away, and that was really nice. But yeah, I stopped going. I think I went one time when I was going to Utah State because one of our friends was going, and I was left after like sacrament meeting. I'm like, I'm not doing this, and I have not been back since. So
love it.
I love it too. I bless up every day that I don't go to church. Every day it's a Sunday and I don't go to church. It's a great Sunday.
Yeah, I love that. I love that story. I love both of you guys' stories. Glad we're breaking free. For me, I think just being here and feeling like and doing so much, and like I had sex when I was in Minden, so I was like feeling shame from there, but still wanting to be a part of it. And then like I literally felt like my whole world came crashing down the day that my mom told me that we had to sell the house and move because like dad got stationed somewhere else, yada yada. And I kept thinking like, I thought like if you believed in God and like you pray and you do all of these things, like am I getting punished for my mistakes? Like I just became very angry. And I also like with what you were just saying about like feeling depressed, I feel like in high school I had like a lot of feelings and emotions and a lot of ways that I took it out on myself that were like completely a no-no in the church. But I like was like, I don't want to hurt my sibling. Not that I would hurt anybody, but like I don't want to be mean to anybody else, but I like don't feel comfortable talking about it with my parents. That I had a therapist here in Minden who was like the biggest piece of shit person I've ever met on the planet. Like she just made me, she was this old lady, and I specifically asked her not to tell my mom anything. And there was like, I was at a certain age, I was like, I thought you said that you don't have to tell my mom anything. And then literally I remember sitting down after my session and my mom walked in and I was sitting outside the door and I could hear everything, and everything that I told her, she was telling my mom. And I was like, I'm fucking done. Like all of my craziest thoughts, and I was just like feeling all of these things and had nowhere to go. And I thought church would be a great outlet, but I still felt that way. And then I remember talking to some adults in the church like about why I feel like depressed, like why do I want to hurt myself, like why am I feeling this way? And they're basically saying like if you hurt yourself, like hurting yourself is a sin, like you're not allowed, and the people that do are weak. And like for context, like my mom's mom killed herself, and like just felt like, well, she wasn't weak. Like my mom's never explained her as like weak. Like how dare you say that? That's my fucking family. And then feeling like, am I weak because I feel that? So now I'm feeling all depressed, and then being told like I'm feeling that way because I'm weak. And like I don't know if you know me, but if someone calls me weak, I'm like, no, I'm not. You know what I mean? Like I had all that feeling, and then hearing that I had to move and like saying goodbye to all my friends, like I felt like I was just finally like settling here, and then moving to another another state, another town, another everything, and like having to restart was really hard, and still having like depressed feelings. And I like tried to throw myself in the church, and that's when I met my gentleman friend at the time, and that I think really solidified my decision, because having like, and I was very boy crazy, probably still am very boy crazy, and having someone that I thought I liked tell me that I'm like a devil and like shaming me for feeling these things. It's like I was so like crazy. What the fuck? Like I was just like, nah, like I just don't think this is for me. And I remember like turning 18 and being like, I don't need to go now. I'm 18, I'm not doing it. And like my sister was still trying to get confirmed, so like I was still trying to be there for her, and like my grandpa was sick, and so I was like trying to help her with her thoughts, and like trying to like use the Bible and like references from church to like help us go through. Like my dad was deployed, my mom was set, we had all of these things happening, and I was trying so hard. And I turned 18 and I was like, no, I'm done. And then I think the real thing is like when my parents got divorced was like, or when I found out like my parents' relationship was over, I was like, oh, this is like, look, church is shit. Like I turned more to like angry and being angry at it, that I was like, I'm done with it. And I think it's shifted a little bit now that I'm a little bit older, but I think like all of those things needed to happen in order for me to leave and then figure out like why I am feeling so depressed. Like, oh, you mean the chemicals in my brain are imbalanced, and all I need to do is like go to a decent therapist to have me talk about my feelings and like have communication and figure that out, and like, oh, I'm feeling this way about boys and people is normal. Like, I just needed that aspect. And I think like if I had stayed with the church, I would have never gotten that. And I think like I had said before, I respect people that go to church. I just don't like it because it does feel culty. And I feel like if you hold everything to this strong standards, you're going to live like a not fun life. I don't like things being shoved down my throat and being told that like what I'm doing is wrong. That's kind of how I broke free from church and religion. But I think it's a good segue into like where I'm at now in life. And I think it's just like, honestly, I don't really know. And I don't know what I believe in. And I'm totally okay with that. And I love having conversations with people who are secure, or like not necessarily secure, but like I've had conversations with people who are religious, who do go to church, but have the mindset of like, I am not I'm not being dictated when I'm at church. Like I go there for the community, and I want to do state. Like there are good Catholic churches out there that are very like community based and fun. Like an aspect after that is like a fun community, and they come together and they really do. Like, we don't have to talk about God. They will shift it to me to say, like, your spirit or, like, your spirituality. Like, they know that I don't like that word. Like, God, saying God sometimes is such, like, a trigger because I'm like, it just doesn't, I don't like it. And so having conversations with people like that has been great because they spread kindness. And I feel so happy to be around them. And then also people who are, like, just trying to figure it out. And honestly, like, I don't really know what I believe. I don't know if I believe in God, but I don't know if there's nothing out there. I feel like because I grew up Catholic, it's kind of hard to think about like it just not being anything because it's literally been engraved in my brain that there is something. But I also like stopped being so afraid of death and stop thinking about like what comes after. I've like really, it's been a struggle, but to like shift my mind to like, this is me right now. Like I'm just going to live and do what I can and be nice to people and love all people, like you were saying. And I think like if that could be a religion, that would be the religion that I believe in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's me. What about you guys?
Do you want to go or do you want me to?
You can go.
Okay. I feel like similar to what you were describing earlier, how you wanted to clarify that kindness isn't the gospel, but that you believe like in kindness. I feel like that is where I'm at. I just want to be kind. I want to be around kind people. I want to love and to be around people that love. Like I do. There are things about going to a church that I recognize as like I try and look at the positive in all things in life. And I think that like the few hours on a Sunday of like reflection, like that's what I'm pulling away as like that can be a good thing that I can take, because I don't want to look at my life and be like, the church is horrible, Mormonism is horrible, I hate that, I'm gonna wipe it clean. Yeah. It's like I think that having some time during the week to reflect on like what can I do better as a person, how can I be a better person, and I do try to do that. Maybe it's not on a Sunday for 3 fucking hours, but like I do try to take that time and reflect. I think the community aspect is a big piece, but I find that in different ways, in like yoga classes with like people that are on their own journey. Yeah. Like I feel like I'm a spiritual person, but I feel like spirituality is a very individual thing. Yes. It's an individual journey, and it's very like an internal thing. And I don't know if I believe in God. I also like if this is it and when I die I just go into the ground, I'm kind of okay with that. Yeah. But if there is something after life, like I feel like it's not a heaven and hell situation.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like it's where you'll go wherever you're most comfortable, which is something that like was kind of taught, I think, in the Mormon church, or it's really just depending on who's interpreting the doctrine. But that was always like, to me, a beautiful thing of like, I know that I wouldn't be comfortable being in heaven with all these Mormons. Yeah. Because I wasn't comfortable at church. So like I'll just go where I feel comfortable with people that I'm comfortable around and in a place that I'm like gonna be happy at. Yeah. And it's not gonna be with these people.
Yeah. I like that. I think I do want to say too, like I think it's whatever, like, your family and your community, like, for me, like, we grew up religious, but both of my grandparents on my dad's side, which is the Latin side, have both passed. And I think, like, it's hard because my family, especially, like, the Latin family, my sister, who's very, like, close to her culture, death is very scary because of the, like, these people that we've loved who took care of us are now gone. And so that aspect, I think, was really hard to get over. But I think, like, I don't feel them when I go to their grave at all, but I don't think that they're like up in heaven watching everything that I do. But I will say, like, in our family, like, our grandmother is a butterfly, and so, like, a monarch butterfly, and literally, like, we'll be sitting at her grave or like doing a family activity, and literally, like, we'll see a butterfly, and I'm like, I don't know if I believe in reincarnation, but this idea of, like, spirit is like that thing presented itself at the time where we needed it. That may just be stupid or silly, but I think, like, that is what I believe, and I think that is a good transition for me, because the death part of our religion was scary because it's unknown and you're supposed to go to here, and so when people die, you better pray that they are up in heaven looking down at you, and, like, I just feel like that's a little creepy. So I'm like, I want them to be with me because, like, I want them there, but they're, like, gone. So, like, how have I transitioned into feeling like, because death is such a big, it's just scary, you know, it's a thing, you know, it's like hard to get around. And so having that has helped, I think, my family a lot with dealing it. And even now, like, I'll see a butterfly, like, walking when I'm thinking about her, something, you know, something silly, and people may laugh, but it's like, that's my way of connecting and how I've, like, tied it back into, like, more of, like, the spiritual energy kind of thing. Yeah, you just made me think of that.
No,
I think
beautiful.
that's really beautiful. I love that. And I think it's like, who gives a shit if that's not real? Like,
this helped me.
Yeah, like, we have this one existence that we're, like, aware of. So let's say that that's your grandma and a butterfly, and that's really cool.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, even if it's just, it will make you think of her.
Yeah.
If anything, like, maybe it's not literally her, but then it reminds you of her, and then you think about how your love for her, and that's beautiful. And
Thank you.
I think that's, like, more significant than anything religion ever taught me.
Absolutely.
So I feel like I don't really know how I would classify myself. I think I kind of felt really, really, really uncomfortable associating with any sort of religious thought, or, like, I just didn't want to spend any more time thinking about it for a minute after I kind of, like, left. And, but I think it's, like, a necessary part of human existence to, like, think about life and think about death. And maybe I have tried to, like, be more comfortable with death and really sit with that and what that means. And I don't know if I would say that I'm, like, a spiritual person. I think in a literal sense, we have this one body and we have this one consciousness. And I think our consciousness is unique to this existence. And regardless of if we are reincarnated, I don't think we have the same consciousness, and this life is unique and this body is unique. And, like, that feels really special. So I feel like I believe in a power, a force in the universe. I think manifestation is real. I think the power of, like, your mind and of positive thinking. Got me that book. Thanks, Dad. Got me a book for Christmas. I think that all of those things are powerful and real and can be channeled to influence the way that your life trajectory goes. But I don't know what any of that means. I don't know if it has a meaning. I don't know if we go into the earth and become a little sprout of grass. And if that's literally all that happens, that's really beautiful. And I'm okay with that. And grateful for this existence.
Same.
I love that.
I'm grateful our existences have collided.
It really is. Sometimes I can't think about it because I'll get, like, over emotional. But I think it's good to talk about, because I think so many people are in that boat because we're just trying to figure it out. Especially if you come from a religious background, it just makes it even more a difficult thing to figure out because you have that trauma from growing up and like wanting to believe one thing. So
I think the thing is like no one knows.
Yeah, no one knows.
Yeah.
And so like what you were saying, regardless of what you believe, and as long as you're not being a total
dickhead,
yeah, then great, believe what you want, because you can't prove it and neither can I.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
So do what you want to do.
Yeah.
But thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Talking
Welcome
about
to
religion.
Polite as Fuck.
Yeah, this feels like a heavier episode. But I'm glad that I feel like we talked about some important
good
stuff.
shit.
I think, yeah. Do you want to plug yourself?
Plug myself. Come Monday nights to the office of Hughes and Porter, and I'll pour you a drink.
I love that.
Thanks, sis.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, as always, thank you guys. Another great episode, and you know where you can follow us at. So you better be liking, subscribing.
Every time she gets a voice.
Every time, I love my voices, my silly words. What did I say last time? Don't be a schmilly bob. That's
and
mine.
we're out.
And we're out. Love ya. Bye.